Madison Square Garden, New York City, October 1970. Saturday night, just after 9 o'clock. The most famous boxing arena in the world is packed with 18,000 screaming fans waiting for Muhammad Ali's comeback fight. After 3 years banned from boxing for refusing the Vietnam draft, Ali is finally back in the ring. But the real drama isn't happening in the ring. It's happening backstage in the narrow corridor outside Ali's dressing room, where a 135-pound martial artist is about to teach a 450-pound bodyguard the most painful lesson of his life. Bruce Lee had come to New York specifically to watch Ali fight. He admired the boxer's speed, his footwork, his understanding of distance and timing. Ali moved like no heavyweight had ever moved before, and Bruce, always studying movement, wanted to see the champion up close, to observe, to learn. They had met before, briefly, at a martial arts demonstration in Los Angeles the previous year. Ali had been in the audience, curious about this young Chinese instructor everyone was talking about. After the demonstration, they had talked for over an hour. Ali had been fascinated by Bruce's philosophy of martial arts, by his ideas about water and formlessness, by the concept of fighting without fighting. They had even sparred lightly, playfully, two masters of combat from completely different worlds finding common ground in their shared understanding of speed and timing. So when Bruce heard Ali would be fighting in New York, making his historic comeback after years of forced exile, he made the trip. He didn't call ahead. He didn't arrange VIP access. He simply showed up at Madison Square Garden a few hours before the fight, walked through the public entrance, and made his way backstage. He knew the layout from previous demonstrations he'd performed here. The backstage area was absolute chaos. Trainers rushing with equipment and water bottles, promoters arguing loudly about money and percentages, journalists everywhere trying to get quotes, trying to capture the atmosphere of Ali's return. Security personnel scattered throughout, trying to maintain some semblance of order in the controlled madness. Camera crews setting up for post-fight interviews. The energy was electric, charged with the significance of the moment. Bruce moved through it all calmly, confidently, his presence commanding respect, even in the chaos. People noticed him. Some recognized him from his role as Kato in The Green Hornet, which had aired a few years earlier. Others simply noticed the way he moved, the economy of motion, the perfect balance. He headed toward the corridor where the fighters' dressing rooms were located, navigating the maze of hallways with certainty. He turned a corner and saw it. Ali's dressing room at the end of the corridor, door closed, voices audible from inside, and standing guard outside that door were two men. One was normal-sized, maybe 200 pounds, wearing the standard arena security uniform, clearly just doing his job. The other was a monster. His name was Raymond. 6'8", 450 pounds of solid mass, not fat, not soft, pure, intimidating bulk, built on a frame of former athletic glory turned to muscle and menace. He'd been a college football player, a defensive lineman with a promising future, until a series of injuries and a worse series of decisions ended his career before it really began. After football, he'd worked as an enforcer for various criminal organizations in Chicago, collecting debts, sending messages, breaking bones when words weren't enough. Eventually, Ali's manager, looking for serious security for the controversial champion's comeback, had hired Raymond for legitimate bodyguard work. It was the best-paying job Raymond had ever had, and he took it seriously. Raymond had a face that looked like it had been carved from granite with a dull axe, and then beaten with a hammer for good measure. His nose had been broken at least 5 times, sitting crooked on his face. Small eyes that showed no warmth, no humor, no recognition of common humanity. A mouth set in a permanent scowl that suggested he'd never smiled, not even as a child. This was a man who had hurt people for money, who had enjoyed it, and who would do it again without hesitation or regret. He wore a black suit that had been specially tailored to fit his massive frame, custom-made by a tailor who specialized in clothing for unusually large men. But even expert tailoring couldn't hide the raw physical power underneath. His shoulders were so broad he had to turn sideways to fit through most doorways. His hands, resting at his sides, were the size of catcher's mitts, scarred knuckles telling stories of violence. His neck was thick as a tree trunk. He looked like a man who could, and had, broken other men in half. Bruce approached calmly, respectfully, his footsteps silent on the concrete floor. He stopped a few feet away from the door, maintaining a respectful distance, and spoke directly to Raymond with a polite tone. "Excuse me, I'm here to see Muhammad. We're friends. He'll want to see me before the fight. If you could just let him know Bruce Lee is here." Raymond looked down at Bruce, way down. The size difference was absurd, almost comical. Raymond outweighed Bruce by more than 300 pounds. He was over a foot taller. To Raymond, Bruce looked like a child. A well-dressed child in black traditional Chinese clothing, well-groomed, clean, but still a child. Someone to be dismissed. "Nobody gets in," Raymond said, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder, like rocks grinding together deep underground. "Mr. Ali is preparing for his fight. No visitors, no exceptions." "I understand," Bruce said patiently, maintaining his calm demeanor. "But if you just tell him Bruce Lee is here, I'm certain he'll want to see me. We've trained together. We've discussed martial arts philosophy. He knows me." "I don't care who you are," Raymond interrupted, his tone dismissive, bordering on contempt. "I don't care if you're the president. Nobody gets in. Mr. Ali needs to focus. Now move along before this becomes a problem." The other security guard, the smaller one, shifted uncomfortably. He recognized Bruce Lee. He'd seen The Green Hornet on television. He'd read articles about this martial arts instructor who was revolutionizing fight choreography in Hollywood. But he wasn't about to contradict Raymond. Nobody contradicted Raymond. People who contradicted Raymond ended up in hospitals. Bruce remained calm, his breathing steady, his posture relaxed. "Listen, I've traveled from Los Angeles specifically to see Muhammad. This is his comeback fight. It's important. I just want to wish him well before he goes out there. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "You deaf?" Raymond took a step forward, using his immense size to intimidate, a tactic that had worked on literally everyone he'd ever encountered. He loomed over Bruce like a building, blocking out the overhead lights. "I said move along, or I'll move you myself, and trust me, you don't want that." Bruce didn't move, didn't back up even an inch, didn't show any fear or intimidation. He simply stood there, looking up at this mountain of a man, his mind calculating angles, distances, vulnerabilities, always analyzing, always 3 moves ahead. "I don't want trouble," Bruce said quietly, his voice still respectful. "I just want to see my friend." "Your friend," Raymond laughed, a harsh sound with absolutely no humor in it, just mockery. "You think you're friends with Muhammad Ali? You're nobody. You make Chinese karate movies for kids. You're not a real fighter. Now get out of here before I throw you out. And if I have to throw you, you won't walk away." The smaller security guard winced. He knew that was the wrong thing to say. You could see it in Bruce Lee's eyes. Something shifted. Bruce's expression didn't change outwardly. His face remained calm, but something shifted in his energy. The air around him seemed to get heavier, denser. The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Bruce said, his voice still calm, but carrying a different quality now. Steel underneath velvet. A blade, hidden in silk. "Please tell Muhammad that Bruce Lee is here. After that, if he doesn't want to see me, I'll leave. But I deserve that courtesy." Raymond's response was to reach out and grab Bruce's chest, his massive hand covering Bruce's entire sternum, fingers spreading across ribs, preparing to shove him backward down the corridor. It was a move Raymond had used 1,000 times. Grab, shove, intimidate. Simple. Effective. It had never failed. It happened so fast that the smaller security guard barely saw it. One moment, Raymond's hand was reaching for Bruce. The next moment, Raymond was stumbling backward, his face showing shock, actual pain. Bruce had struck Raymond's extended arm, not hard, just a precise tap at the elbow joint, causing Raymond's arm to buckle and retract involuntarily. Before Raymond could process what happened, Bruce had stepped slightly to the side, his positioning perfect. Raymond, not used to being touched, not used to anyone daring to strike him, let alone hurt him, roared with anger. Actual rage flooded his face. His small eyes narrowed further, his jaw clenched. This little Chinese man had just humiliated him, had just made him look weak in front of the other security guard. That couldn't stand. That could never stand. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Raymond growled, and lunged forward with shocking speed for a man his size. He'd been a defensive lineman. He knew how to move. His massive hands reached for Bruce, intending to grab, to crush, to hurt. Bruce moved like water, like smoke, like something that wasn't quite physical. Raymond's hands grasped empty air. Bruce was no longer where he'd been a fraction of a second earlier. He'd shifted his weight, angled his body, and suddenly he was beside Raymond, not in front of him. Raymond spun, confused, angry, and threw a wild punch. A haymaker that would have taken Bruce's head off if it had connected. It didn't connect. Bruce ducked under it with minimal movement, economical, efficient, and as the punch passed over his head, Bruce struck. One punch, precise, focused, not wild, not angry, simply technical. Bruce's fist connected with Raymond's solar plexus, the bundle of nerves just below the sternum, with perfect accuracy and perfect timing. The power that came from Bruce's 135-pound frame was absurd. It was generated not from muscle mass, but from perfect body mechanics, from the kinetic chain that started in his feet, traveled through his legs, rotated through his hips, extended through his torso, and expressed itself through his fist. The 1-inch punch, fully extended. Raymond's eyes went wide. The air exploded from his lungs. He'd been hit before. He'd been in fights. He'd been tackled by 300-pound linebackers running at full speed. But he'd never been hit like this. Never felt power like this. It wasn't about the force. It was about the precision. Bruce had hit exactly the right spot at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right timing. Raymond doubled over, gasping, his hands going to his chest, trying to breathe, trying to understand what just happened. He was still on his feet. Barely. But he was hurt. Really hurt. And then Bruce swept Raymond's lead leg. A simple technique. Basic. But executed with perfect timing. Raymond, already off balance, already struggling to breathe, went down. 450 pounds of Bodyguard crashed to the concrete floor with a sound like a car accident. The impact echoed through the corridor. People heard it from other hallways and came running to see what happened. Raymond lay on his back, stunned, embarrassed, hurt, trying to breathe, trying to comprehend how a man a third his size had just put him on the ground. The smaller security guard stood frozen, his hand on his radio, not sure what to do. Should he call for backup? Should he try to help Raymond? Should he try to stop Bruce Lee? None of those options seemed wise. At that exact moment, the dressing room door opened. Muhammad Ali stepped out, wearing his boxing robe, his hands already wrapped in preparation for the fight. He'd heard the crash. He'd heard the commotion. He looked down at Raymond on the floor, then looked at Bruce standing calmly a few feet away, and immediately understood what had happened. "Bruce!" Ali's face broke into a huge smile. "Man, what are you doing here? You should have told me you were coming." "I tried," Bruce said calmly, gesturing to Raymond. "Your security was very thorough." Ali looked down at Raymond, who was slowly, painfully, trying to sit up. "Raymond, man, what happened? Why are you on the floor?" Raymond, humiliated, angry, struggling to breathe properly, tried to speak. This man, he attacked me. I was just doing my job." Ali looked from Raymond to Bruce and back again. Understanding dawned. "Oh no, Raymond, please tell me you didn't try to stop Bruce Lee from seeing me. Please tell me you didn't put your hands on this man." "I didn't know," Raymond managed, finally getting air into his lungs. "He said he knew you, but everyone says that. I was protecting you. That's my job." Ali sighed, a long, heavy sigh, and extended his hand to help Raymond up. The massive bodyguard took it and, with Ali's help and significant effort, got back to his feet. He stood there, embarrassed, still holding his chest, looking at Bruce with new eyes. Not anger now, something else. Respect. Maybe even fear. "Raymond," Ali said, his voice gentle but firm, This is Bruce Lee. He's my friend. He's also probably the most dangerous man you'll ever meet. You're lucky he didn't really hurt you. If he'd wanted to hurt you, we'd be calling an ambulance right now." Raymond nodded slowly, understanding. "Bruce," Ali continued, turning to his friend, "I am so sorry. This is my fault. I should have told Raymond you might come. I should have left word. This is completely my fault, man. I apologize." "It's fine," Bruce said, his tone genuinely unbothered. "He was doing his job. I respect that. No hard feelings." He looked at Raymond and gave a small nod of respect. Raymond, swallowing his pride, nodded back. Ali put his arm around Bruce's shoulders and started to guide him into the dressing room. "Come on, man. I've got about 20 minutes before I need to head to the ring. Let's talk. I want to show you something I've been working on with my footwork." They started into the dressing room, but Ali paused and turned back to Raymond. "Raymond, you're a good bodyguard. You're loyal, you're strong, and you take your job seriously. I appreciate that. But you just learned an important lesson. Size doesn't mean everything. Technique matters. Timing matters. And never, ever assume someone is harmless just because they're small." Raymond nodded, the lesson sinking in deep. He'd remember this moment for the rest of his life. The day a 135-pound man put him on the floor with one punch. Inside the dressing room, Ali's trainer and cornermen looked up, surprised to see Bruce. Ali made quick introductions, then pulled Bruce aside. Man, I'm glad you're here, Ali said quietly. I'm nervous. 3 years away from boxing, I don't know if I still have it. I don't know if I'm still the same fighter. You're not the same fighter, Bruce said. You're better. You've matured. You've suffered. You've been tested in ways that have nothing to do with boxing. All of that makes you stronger. They talked for 15 minutes about movement, about breathing, about staying present in the moment. Bruce demonstrated a concept from Wing Chun about centerline theory. Ali showed Bruce a new combination he'd been developing. Two masters, sharing knowledge, each learning from the other. When it was time for Ali to head to the ring, he walked Bruce back to the corridor. Raymond was still there, back at his post, standing straight but definitely moving more gingerly than before. Raymond, Ali said, make sure Bruce gets a ringside seat. Best seat in the house. He's my special guest. Raymond nodded. Yes, sir, Mr. Ali. He looked at Bruce. Mr. Lee, if you'll follow me, I'll take you to your seat personally. They walked through the backstage area together, an odd pair. The massive bodyguard and the compact martial artist. As they walked, Raymond spoke quietly. Mr. Lee, I need to apologize. I was disrespectful. I judged you by your size. That was ignorant. You were doing your job, Bruce said, protecting someone you're responsible for. There's honor in that. No apology necessary. Can I ask you something? Raymond said. That punch. I've been hit by linebackers. I've been in street fights. I've never felt anything like that. How is that possible? Bruce smiled slightly. Because you were expecting power from muscle. What hit you was power from physics, from timing, from angles, from understanding how the human body works. I don't need to be strong. I need to be precise. Raymond thought about that. Could you teach me that? If you're willing to learn, yes. But it requires humbling yourself, admitting you don't know, starting over. Most people aren't willing to do that. After tonight, Raymond said, rubbing his chest, I'm willing. Bruce gave Raymond his contact information in Los Angeles. Whether Raymond would actually follow up, Bruce didn't know. But he'd offered. They reached the ringside area. Raymond spoke to an usher and had Bruce seated in the second row, perfect view of the ring. The crowd was deafening now, the fight about to start. Raymond stood nearby, watching over the area, still doing his job, but watching Bruce with new understanding. Ali entered the ring to thunderous applause. 3 years away, banned for his principles, and now back, proving that courage isn't just physical. The fight itself was brutal, competitive, went the distance. Ali won by decision. As the referee raised his hand, Ali looked directly at Bruce's seat and pointed, a gesture of thanks. Bruce nodded back. After the fight, backstage was chaos again. Reporters, cameras, celebration. Bruce slipped out quietly, not wanting to intrude on Ali's moment. As he left Madison Square Garden and stepped into the cold New York night, he thought about the evening. He hadn't come here to fight. He'd come to support a friend. But sometimes, life puts obstacles in your path. Sometimes, a 450-pound bodyguard stands between you and where you need to be. And sometimes, you have to move that obstacle. Not with anger, not with ego, just with technique, with precision, with the understanding that size doesn't determine the outcome. Skill does. Years later, Raymond would tell the story. He'd tell it honestly, without embellishment, with full acknowledgement of how badly he'd underestimated Bruce Lee. He'd tell it as a lesson in humility. And people would listen, because the truth has power that fiction never will. The encounter lasted less than 10 seconds, but its impact would last a lifetime. Raymond did follow up. 3 weeks later, he showed up at Bruce's school in Los Angeles. He was nervous, uncertain, this massive man who had intimidated everyone he'd ever met, now standing humbly in a martial arts school ready to learn. Bruce worked with him personally for months. Raymond would never be fast like Bruce. He'd never have that precision. But he learned principles. He learned how to use his size more efficiently. He learned that strength without technique is wasted. Most importantly, he learned humility. He learned that the world was full of people who knew things he didn't, and that was okay. That was actually good. That was how you grew. The other students at Bruce's school were initially intimidated by Raymond's size, but they quickly learned what Bruce already knew. Size doesn't determine character. Raymond became one of the most respectful, most dedicated students Bruce ever taught. He protected that gym like he'd protected Allie, but now with the understanding that real strength comes from wisdom, not just muscle. And whenever new students would come in, cocky and confident, thinking their size or their strength made them formidable, Raymond would tell them the story. The story of the night he learned that a 135-pound man could put a 450-pound man on the floor with one punch. And the students would listen because Raymond had lived it, because he bore the lesson in his body and his memory, because he understood, in a way most people never would, what true mastery actually meant. The story spread throughout the Bodyguard community in New York and beyond. Raymond didn't hide what happened. He owned it. He used it as a teaching moment for others in his profession. "Don't assume," he would tell younger bodyguards. "Don't judge by appearance. Don't let your size make you arrogant. I outweighed Bruce Lee by over 300 pounds, and he put me down in seconds. Size is an advantage, but it's not everything." Some bodyguards dismissed the story, thought Raymond was exaggerating or making excuses, until they met Bruce Lee themselves, until they saw him move, until they understood that there are levels to combat that most people never reach, and Bruce Lee had reached a level that defied normal understanding. Muhammad Ali never forgot what happened that night either. He would reference it in interviews when people asked about the greatest fighters he'd ever seen. "People always want to know who would win, boxer versus martial artist," Ali would say. "I've sparred with Bruce Lee. I've seen what he can do. There's no contest. If it's in a ring with rules, maybe I have a chance. But in a real fight, Bruce would destroy me. He'd destroy anyone. He's not just fast, he's smart. He understands the body in ways that are almost supernatural." That endorsement from the greatest boxer in the world meant something. It validated what martial artists had been saying for years, that Bruce Lee wasn't just an actor, wasn't just a teacher. He was a legitimate, dangerous, highly skilled fighter who understood combat at a level few people ever reached. And it all started with a 450-pound bodyguard who learned the hardest lesson of his life on a concrete floor in Madison Square Garden.